Welcome to the Karen Kenney Show.
Hey, you guys, welcome to the Karen Kenney Show. I'm super duper excited to be here today. And it's so funny because I actually had no intention of recording this. If you're watching this right now, you can see like I just kind of woke up. I just woke up, just threw my hair up in a ponytail. I'm getting ready to go to the gym. But I sometimes have no control over when inspiration strikes. And so when spiritual team, STOTJ, when spiritual team is on the job, man, I hop to and listen. So here's what's going on. I think I'm going to call this sucker Little Hinges Swing Big Doors. Little Hinges Swing Big Doors. I think that's what I'm going to call this. We'll see. I might change my mind between now and then when this sucker airs. But here's the deal. I want to dive into this concept because I fucking love it so much. And I said this, actually, this phrase, little hinges, swing big doors, the other day to a client. And I want to explain to you why it is wicked important and helpful to all of us, whether you own a business, whether you don't own a business, whether you're just trying to make some changes in your life, transform a habit, create a pattern interrupt, to think differently, be differently, move differently, whatever the thing is. This is a really powerful concept. So I was getting ready to go to the gym, as I said, right? And one of the things that I do is I check in with my coach. So some of you have seen my friend, my brother from another mother, Jordan Droness on the show before. A lot of people know him as Conscious Muscle, and Jordan is a vegan bodybuilder, and he owns Conscious Muscle Vegan Fitness and Nutrition. So he's been working with me in spiritual mentoring and integrative change work, all the stuff that I offer, and I've been coaching with him, getting back in the gym. And so I was checking in with him. And one of the cool things about working with him is I have access to this app. And on this app, at the end of every workout, so that's where my program lives. So while I'm at the gym and I'm doing my reps and my sets and the weights and whatever, I'm plugging in like, how much I'm lifting, how many sets I'm doing, all this stuff. And at the end of the workout, it's basically like you hit like save workout. And when you complete that, depending on what you've done in the gym that day, all of a sudden this little thing pops up, and I'm going to show you a little picture kind of. I printed it out so you can just get an idea. And I was just like, so yesterday, so I'm 1 week in to our third month of working together. And I think, the thing is that I am, so I go to the gym 5 days a week, strength training. And then I'm now in month 3, I'm also incorporating in more cardio. So normally, like I usually in the warmer months, I run 3 miles, 5 days a week. I like to move my body. I love walking. Walking is such a powerful cardio exercise as well. And just getting outside, getting like in nature, getting some sun in your eyes, hearing the birds, just like, it's just good. It's good for the soul. It's good for the body. It's good for the mind. It's good for your mental health, right? To get outside and move and breathe. And again, if you are a fan of Andrew Huberman, you know how Huberman talks about getting sunlight in your eyes, like first thing in the morning. So anyway, so I'm week 1 into the 3 months, and the results are starting to pay off. And how do I know? How do I know that these daily small incremental changes of going to the gym, right? So what happens is you punch in like, each set, each rep, whatever, the weight you lifted. And then when you hit your save your workout, something like this pops up. So if you're not watching, what I'm holding up is a little sheet of paper. And at the top, it has the number 9 in like this little badge, like, oh, I was awarded a badge, right? It's like when I was never a Girl Scout or, or for some of you who are Boy Scouts, you would earn your patches, you would earn your badges, I guess. So this is like, an electronic one. It's pretty cool. So all of a sudden on the screen, you get like a virtual high five, like boop, a virtual high five pops up, and then it will tell you. And so this one was telling me that yesterday I had 9 new personal bests in the gym. So my max weight, and the details don't really matter, but just so you understand what I'm talking about, it's alerting you to how you've improved. So all these little wins, right? So like yesterday on the seated leg extension, I went up 5 pounds. In the leg press, I went up 20 pounds. In the dumbbell sumo squat, I went up 5 pounds, right? So, and on and on. So I had 9 new personal bests yesterday. I did like 5 more lying leg lifts than I had done before, whatever. And when you see it racked out, so all you know is you're in the gym and you're sweating and you're working hard and you get your head down and you're trying to fucking just like get through the workout, and you get to rate it at the end. Oh, this was hard. This was somewhat hard. This was wicked hard, right? Oh, it says really hard. This was really hard. I'm always like really hard. This was really hard. But the beautiful thing is this reward that you get, this acknowledgement of your hard work. And look, you do 1 more rep, you go up 2 little pounds, right? Like you make this little progress, and all of a sudden, boom, you get a badge, like you get an award. And I'm sharing this with you today because I don't think we celebrate enough the little wins that we have each day. The little things that we accomplish each day, these tiny little things kind of slide underneath our radar. And I remember that I did a podcast episode called, and I'm going to make the connection, first of all, to little hinges and big doors in a minute. But I remember I did a podcast episode called, Are You a High Bar Jumper? And what I mean by that is a lot of times when we're trying to accomplish something, or we've set an intention or a goal, or we have a dream, or whatever the thing is, once we'll work wicked hard towards that thing, we'll put in the time, we put in the energy, we put in the effort, then we accomplish it. And what we often do, I'm not saying everybody does this, some people hopefully are fantastic at celebrating themselves and their wins. But a lot of times what we do is, as soon as we hit that goal, so let's assume the goal, let's think of the goal as a high bar jump, right? It's like we set it at like 4 feet or 5 feet or whatever it is. And as soon as we hit it, as soon as we go up and over the bar and we land on the other side, we don't stop to celebrate what we just did. We don't stop to acknowledge like, holy shit, like I just did this thing. What we normally do is we just set the bar higher and then get back to the hustle or the grind or the doing or the whatever. And I'm like, people, I can't, as somebody who loves to celebrate people and cheerlead things, it's so important. It's so important. It's so important to your mind. It's so important to your spirit. It's so important to your soul, I think, for your emotions too, to acknowledge what you just did, what you just accomplished. Because that little thing, like I'm looking at this and I'm like, ooh, I went up 5 pounds. Right? It can be really easy for the ego to slide in there and be such a little bastard, to be a little shit, right? And try to downplay what you've done. And I'm like, no, I earned those 5 pounds. Like I'm getting stronger. And why am I getting stronger? Because one day at a time, I am getting my ass to the gym and I'm doing what's on my program. I'm taking the most next aligned step, which is follow the program, because I've hired somebody who's smarter than me in this area. I'm not a bodybuilder. Yeah, I've been a gym rat my whole life. I could get around a gym, but I'm not over there sculpting physiques. I don't know, So it's like, hey, I've got this thing. I'm going to follow it. And when I follow it and I get results, I'm going to stop and pause and celebrate it and pat myself on the back and like high five and like, woohoo, like I get wicked excited and I screenshot my 9 new personal bests and I send it to my coach and I send it to my sweetie so I can have that little moment, because I understand that we love to downplay these things. And in some cultures and with some people, there can be a fear that you don't celebrate your accomplishments because it feels arrogant. It feels kind of like humble brag. It feels like whatever. And I'm like, no, man, blood, sweat, and tears. Like you've earned it. You've put in the time. You've put in the energy. You've put in the effort. You've stayed in self-integrity and you kept your word to yourself. And, this applies not just to when we're trying to get physically stronger, here's what we know about getting physically stronger. Those tiny incremental increases in your weight loads and in your reps, those tiny little things, they start to gain momentum. And it's the same thing when we're trying to grow our spiritual muscles, when we're trying to strengthen our mental and emotional muscles. Because when we're trying to adapt or change or transform the quality of our thoughts or our patterns of behavior or patterns of thinking, or when we're trying to, change our habits and the way that maybe we speak to ourselves or the way that we talk to ourselves or others, when we start the process of like unshaming ourselves and learning to love ourselves and learning to trust ourselves, those bit by bit, one day at a time, one foot in front of the other, taking the most next aligned step that you can take towards your happiness, your hope, your healing, your health, all of those things, those tiny little incremental changes, they gain compound interest, like they build up. They gain both traction and they gather compound interest. And we take for granted sometimes, we don't see the magic of the process of doing these things, these small things incrementally, and it's just like one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, we are slowly changing. And it's so interesting because I don't know if I talked about this already on a podcast, but I was talking to Jordan, my coach, about this, how because I see my body every day, I'm not seeing things the way that somebody outside of me who only sees pictures of me once a month or whatever is seeing things, because you adapt, you attune, you get used to, right? Like you're just like, oh yeah. But if you look at month 1 to month 3 to month 6 to month 12, it's like, holy shit. And it's the same thing, not just with physical stuff. It's the same thing with spiritual work or personal development work or whatever, unshaming work, right? Integrative change work. It's like, wow, I'm way less anxious than I used to be. Wow, I yell at my kids way less often, right? I'm more patient than ever before. Wow, I've been wicked consistent. Hey, I noticed that I'm not procrastinating anymore. I'm sitting my ass down and I'm writing a few pages or a few sentences or a few paragraphs towards my book. Hey, I noticed I've been more consistent at balancing my budget and writing down where my money is going or how many calories I'm eating or whatever the thing is. And we don't recognize that every little bit of effort makes a big difference. And there's a beautiful quote in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita comes from a larger work in India called the Mahabharata. And I just love the Bhagavad Gita. I especially love the interpretation or the translation by my teacher Eknatheshwaran. And this is where I first read it in the Bhagavad Gita, but in his book, that was the translation of it. And listen to this quote. I love this. It says, on this path, right? So on the spiritual path, effort never goes to waste and there is no failure. Let me say that again. On this spiritual path, effort never goes to waste and there is no failure. Even a little effort toward spiritual awareness will yield protection from the greatest fear. I love this concept that even a little bit of effort towards spiritual awareness is going to yield really great results. And I love this. And it got me to thinking about something that I said the other day. And I was curious about it. I was like, I've been saying this quote for a really long time. And sometimes I change it up. Sometimes I say, hey, little hinges, right? They swing open wicked big doors. But really the phrase I think technically is little hinges swing big doors. And it comes from this guy, Clement Stone. I think it's like W. Clement Stone. And he was an American businessman. He was a new thought leader. He was an author. And he's really well known for like the PMA, the positive mental attitude movement. And this guy started with nothing, like poor, like hawking, like slinging newspapers at like 6 years old. And he went on to build like an insurance empire and make millions of dollars. And one of the things that he says, this is his famous quote, little hinges swing big doors. So one of the things I try to remind my mentoring clients and my coaching clients is, whether it's entrepreneurial work, changing the way that they feel about themselves in marketing and putting themselves out there and being more visible and trusting themselves to make good financial decisions, or working with people on a personal level who have some things going on in their personal life, and whether they're traumas and tragedies or whatever, because it doesn't matter whether you're in business or not. I'm going to do a whole podcast on how your life is like a business. So whether you're technically a business owner or an entrepreneur or not, your life is like a business. And I'm going to dive into that on another episode. But these things are applicable across the board. So I remember going into a church one time, and this has happened to me many, many times, where I go into either a church or a huge temple or like just historic places that I've visited. And you look at these glorious, huge, like gorgeous doors. And you think, oh my God, these things weigh a gazillion pounds. Like, how heavy and huge is this thing? But then if you look at them, and you look at the hinges that swing them open, they're tiny. And we can lose sight of the fact that these tiny little things can create incredible possibility. And if you listened to my podcast last week, I talked all about this, about the magic of possibilities, right? The truth telling of what becomes possible when you're like a business person and you're like, I'm not going to be here and like make you promises, because you have a role to play in this. I can promise you what I'm going to try to do and what I'm going to teach and what I'm going to share, and I'm going to show up and do my best. But like your effort, right? Your effort counts. And so the possibility of when you say yes to doing this work, the possibilities that like the doors that swing open wide when you sit down and commit to a DSP, a daily spiritual practice, when you commit to whatever the goal is, the intention is, when you show up and each day you take the next smallest, most aligned step, when you show up and you do like 5 minutes, 10 minutes of meditation in the morning, prayer time, contemplation, journaling, whatever your DSP happens to be, because that moment is setting you up for the rest of the day. Ashwaran says that like meditation is when you download the mojo you need for the rest of your day. So the magic is happening, right? You think like, oh, like, so what? I sat down and connected to God or source or love or my highest self or my higher power or my best thing for a few minutes. It's like 5 sincere minutes in the morning can set up your whole day for success. You get your mind right first thing in the morning, you are way more likely to show up better with your kids, at work, in your business, online, in your sales calls, in your coaching program, in your art, writing your book, whatever you're creating. And there's another guy. It's like we forget how amazing it is that such little things can make such a big difference. These little moments when you pause and interrupt the pattern of talking shit to yourself. It's like, boop, pattern interrupt, right? Which creates self-directed neuroplasticity. You're changing your brain just by doing that little stop it, right? That little boop, that little pattern interrupt. And these are things that I teach, right, and coach on when I'm coaching both the conscious and the unconscious mind in my work, when I'm helping people to create, right, and to use. I can't make them use them. I can teach them. It's up to them to pick up the tools. I can say, here are the tools. It's up to them to use them. But when they do, we think, how can this little thing like stop it, or this little thing like tapping or whatever create such a huge difference? It's because small hinges swing open big doors because big changes can happen from doing little things consistently. When you become committed and you start to do things each day intentionally, mindfully, consciously, when you kind of break down the habit of your anxiety, when you interrupt the habit of being anxious or fill in the blank, it's a huge thing. And it seems like such a small thing, but it has compound interest. It makes a huge difference. It gathers momentum and it gathers compound interest. And Bruce Barton, he says this great quote. I love this. And he says this. I'm trying to think what book. I don't know what book this was in. It was in some book somewhere. You can Google it if you're that interested. And it said, he said this. He says, sometimes when I consider what tremendous consequences come from little things, I am tempted to think there are no little things. Let me say that again. Sometimes when I consider what tremendous consequences, AKA wicked big consequences, come from little things, I am tempted to think there are no little things. So you guys, I want you to just like literally, as you're moving through the world today, whenever you listen to this, pay attention and notice, like look at some doors. Look at some doors in your house, in the building you work in the stores you go into, whatever it is. And look at how those 3 tiny little hinges do some wicked heavy lifting. And it's incredible when we start to think like, oh, just the daily habit of drinking water first thing in the morning, just the daily habit of getting sunlight in my eyes. It helps me sleep better at night. It seems like such a tiny little thing, but it has huge consequences, tremendous consequences, as Bruce Barton reminds us, right? Remember, on this path, no effort goes to waste. There's no failure as long as we're doing it. So in the beginning, let's just say you're quote unquote out of shape, meaning you haven't been exercising, moving your body, taking good care of yourself, eating nurturing and nourishing food. You've been drinking too much. You've been doing too much of this and not enough of that, right? Too much bitching and moaning, not enough gratitude. Too much fear, not enough love, whatever the thing is. We can start with a tiny little thing and just know those tiny little things. Remember, you go to the gym, right? Those little pink weights, right? 2 pounds, 3 pounds, building up to 5 pounds, right? The colors on those weights change. Yes, so you can differentiate, oh, that's a 2 pound, that's a 3 pound. But also the mind is clocking, ooh, new color, new badge, I'm moving up, I'm growing, right? It's psychological. It's a fantastic thing. And in the beginning, we think, oh, what's a 1 pound different? Well, a 1 pound different each week at the end of the year, you know what I'm saying? It makes a huge difference. Now, of course, at some point with physical weights, you're probably going to plateau and top out, right? And that's okay. I don't need to be squatting 400. I'm not a power lifter. That's not my goal. My goal is to get stronger and to feel healthier. And that's one of the things. Ladies, if you are listening, if you are hearing the sound of my voice, one of the greatest things that we can do for ourselves. Now, look, I know some people are like, I don't really like to go to the gym. I don't like to, but look at, it's so helpful for us to keep up our strength as we age. It's great for bone density because when old people fall, it's the number one reason why they get injured is because they have low bone density and things break. And then it's a hard time and they don't recover well, right? So I always think like, yes, maybe some of it is vanity, right? Of course, aesthetics. Who doesn't want to look decent, right? I like to feel strong, but this is the thing. I like to feel strong. I like to feel fit. I like to feel healthy. I like to know that I can move things and carry my groceries and do things and take care of myself from the inside out. So a lot of time, we look at like these little things like exercise or taking a walk or going to yoga or building muscle. And don't be afraid to build some muscle. Don't be afraid to build muscle. You're not going to get jacked. You're not going to get bulky. It's like start lifting some heavier weights Start to build some muscle. This is just a love shout out from my heart to yours, to take good care of yourself so that you, you can help yourself. You can, like, again, muscle mass, bone density is 1,000 other reasons it can be so good for you. And I always get so happy when I see women my age or older at the gym, like pushing weights. I'm like, yes, it makes me so excited for them because I know the benefits across the board. And it's not all vanity, you guys. There's really sound scientific and health reasons for doing so. Okay, so here's the thing I want to go back to. This disregard that we sometimes have for the little changes that we're making. We don't celebrate the little things because we think, well, I got to wait till I hit that milestone or that milestone or that milestone. And it's like, no, you sat your ass down today and you did your DSP. Double amen hands, man. Give yourself a little mark on the calendar. Give yourself a little sticker. Give yourself a little gold star, whatever kind of sticker you want, and be like, yeah, I did it. And I know that over time, it's like anything, like trying to learn how to play the guitar. You practice each day, right? Your fingers get more adept. Your strumming gets more adept. You learn a new chord, and then the world opens up to you. You start with 3 chords, and then before you know it, you're playing all these different songs because little hinges open, swing big doors. You know what I'm saying? And I love this concept. And it's the same thing in spiritual development. It's the same thing in personal work. It's the same thing in transformational work when we're trying to change habits, because that's really what's going on, you guys. We are hypnotized from a very young age. And I always say this, I use hypnosis, integrative hypnosis, conversational hypnosis to de-hypnotize people from the habits and the patterns and the thoughts and the stories and the beliefs that they have. And it shows up in 1,000 different ways in our lives. But one of the things that I see is, there's this fear of coming across like we don't think, how do I say this? New England is especially, blue collar kids especially, we just think that hard work is part of the deal. That in order to get stuff, we got to work hard. We got to earn it. You got to earn that shit. You know what I mean? So we put in a day's worth of work. We don't think it's a big deal. And I'm like, hey, that day's worth of work, if we're talking about actual work where you're exchanging work and time for money, that just earned you part of your paycheck. That's helping you put food on the table. So good on you for getting your ass out of bed and on time and showing up and being prepared and getting the job done. High five to yourself. You know what I'm saying? For people who are trying to break the habit of procrastination. Hey, you sat down and you wrote 2 sentences. Hey, you sat down and you, input your stuff into Quicken to balance your budget. Hey, you made that post on social media like you had promised yourself. You stayed in self-integrity. Celebrate that shit. Because those little small hinges open eventually wicked big doors. And I don't think we appreciate, right, when we're keeping our word to ourselves, when we're doing these things, when we hit these goals, these dreams, these markers, these whatever. So this little thing, right, 9 personal bests that I got yesterday, I stopped for a second and I thought, hell yeah. Because there's a version of me, there's a part of me, right? A younger version of me that would have rolled her eyes and be like, what do you want? A cookie? You want a pat on the head? You want to be told that you're good? You know what the answer is? Yeah, I do. Yes, I do. I don't need it all the time, but man, it feels good, right? For our work to be acknowledged, for our effort to be acknowledged, to be like, hey, I put in the time. I put in the effort. I put in the energy, the sweat equity, right? Like literally when you're at the gym, but it's the same thing. I can look back, and people often say to me, and whatever it is, you have such a good positive attitude. You seem really happy. You seem to have created a life that you love, blah, 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 like whatever the thing is. And I'm like, oh, it just looks like this, however it looks to the outside world. I don't know. I'm not in other people's heads. I don't know exactly what I look like or my life looks like. But when I get those little compliments, right? When I get those compliments or that feedback from people, they're just kind of looking at this larger end result. They're looking at the door And I'm like, what they're forgetting is that my habit of being a happy person. Now, look, I'm human. I still obviously, I have moments and day, I don't usually have full days. I always say this. I'm not being a dick or trying to be superior, but I tend to get my mind right pretty quickly. It doesn't mean there aren't tough times or tough things, right? Like when we lost 3 of our furry kids, like within whatever it was like 6 months or something like that. Like that's brutal. That's hard. But I still show up and I get up and I still grieve though. That's the thing. I don't deny myself my humanity. I don't deny myself. That's why I can be happy, because I don't see, like, I allow myself to cry and feel my feelings and allow the emotions to move through me. Right? I don't walk around just like, like a smile pit, like namaste hands, all like pasted on my body and my face. I'm fucking human. Like I'm real about it, But I do like, and we're back. Let me get back to my point. A lot of times people are focusing on the door and they're not focusing on the 1,000 little hinges of the daily spiritual practice, the all the work in my process, right? There's a 4-step pattern to change, you guys. There's a 4-step pattern. It underlies all change. And your story to your glory is that pattern, right? So I was my own first client and I went first and I did these patterns on myself. I've used these tools on myself, right? Because I wanted to get out of my own way. I wanted to get out of my own suffering. I wanted to not, how do I say this? I wasn't trying to rush my grief or anything like that, but I started to clearly see how it was me who was perpetuating self-inflicted suffering. And I wanted to be able to find a better way. And that's one of the things I said, there must be a better way. But it was the daily intentional. I didn't always get it right. I've blown it sometimes, of course, again, human, right? But yet she persists and yet she persists, right? So daily determination, dedication, discipline, and devotion, those little hinges each day have swung open some big doors in my life. And now I'm trying to get, like, my work now is like in my personal life, it's like, yeah, got it. Now it's like in my business life, continuing to apply and grow and learn. But anything I'm learning from my business, it's applicable for my personal life. And anything I learn in my personal life, it's applicable to my business. So you guys, if there's a place in your life, right? Maybe you're on day 2 of not smoking. Maybe you're on day 8 of sobriety. Right? Maybe you're like on your 4th week of consistently going to the gym or going outside for a walk or doing your meditation practice. Or maybe you've written, right? For the last 5 days, you've sat down at your computer and you've written, a few sentences or paragraphs or words, right? For your book. Maybe you've consistently, took a moment of gratitude for your partner, for your sweetie, for your lover, whatever it is. Maybe whatever the thing is, maybe you're eating, right? Maybe you're somebody who's trying to go vegan and you've been consistent at cutting back on things that, right, that no longer feel aligned for you, whatever it is. It's important that you take a moment to acknowledge, you know why? One, because it's fun, right? High-fiving, like cheerleading yourself, like, yeah, getting the gold star, getting the sticker. It's why little kids, we love to get stickers. And I think a lot of times as adults, I should do a whole podcast on this. I think that as adults, we think, I don't need the stickers anymore. I don't know about you, but my little kid inside of me, the little bunny, she loves getting little stickers. She loves getting that little, yeah, you did it, high five. Right? We think as adults, like, oh, we don't need that stuff. That's childish. That's immature. It's like, nah, it's fun. It's fun. We might not need it the same way, right? But we like to acknowledge our progress. It's fun to acknowledge our progress, to say, hey, kept my word to myself. And I don't think we make a big enough deal about the little things. And it's also important because when we start to see the pattern, when we start to recognize it, when we do repetition again and again and again, You get that little dopamine hit. You get that little reward. You take that little moment to pause, right? And it's like, ooh, there's chemicals happening in your brain. Neuroplasticity, we're training the brain for change. We are training the brain and we're creating new neural networks. So it's not just ego stuff like, oh, I want the little pat on the head, told I'm a good girl or a good boy. No, it's like we are helping to create long-lasting change by doing these tiny little daily things. And maybe I can do a whole other thing on compound interest because I don't think we understand the power of that as well. So I gave it a little acknowledgement in this episode, right? But you guys, little hinges swing big doors. I can't say this enough. So I hope you take a moment at some point today, or maybe you start tomorrow, where you get yourself a little calendar or a little piece of paper, like you give yourself a little sticker. Like, for example, I think I think it was on my friend Emily's podcast. She Built This podcast. We were talking about what I call what one of my coaches, Simone Soul, calls the garbage post challenge, the GPC. And I love it. And so it's a way of you basically post 100 pieces of content in 30 days. Now, I know for some of you, it's like, oh, fuck that. I have no desire to do that. I'm like, I want to try this thing. I want to see. I love to experiment. That is part of my design is I need to experiment to find out things. I need to experiment, either go be successful and fail, quote unquote, fail, right? Whatever that means. For me, it's just learning. It's like, oh, that's just learning. I learned I don't like that. I learned I suck at that. I learned that's my strength, whatever the thing is, right? So I do things to find out sometimes how I feel about it. That's just it, right? So what I learned is it's like, ooh, I like to make little graphs and charts. And then I like to give myself a little check mark or a little sticker. It brings me joy and it motivates me because then I don't want to break the pattern. I'm like, I want to earn that. I want to earn that sticker. I want to get that mark. You know what I mean? And so I'm celebrating those little wins. And then at the end, I have this whole sheet. And it's like, holy shit, I got 30 or 31 stickers. I was consistent. And when I see that, something inside of my brain changes. This is how we change habits. So let's not discount. Let's not take for granted. Let's not ignore those little things that we do each day. All right. I feel like I can keep going on and on and on and talking about this, but I'm going to stop it right here. So I hope you celebrate your little hinges. And I hope you don't lose sight of these big doors, these dreams, these hopes, these visions, whatever, your ministry, your mission, your message, your mandate, the things you're trying to create in the world. Whatever that is, a successful marriage, a successful business, writing a book, losing weight, getting stronger, whatever your dream is. Just take the next smallest aligned action consistently and commit to it. Remember, daily, the 5 Ds of DSP that I've created, right? Daily dedication, determination, discipline, and devotion. You do a daily spiritual practice every day, and I'm telling you, as it tells us in the ancient traditions, right? On this spiritual path or on any path, right? Effort never goes to waste. There is no failure. Even a little effort towards spiritual awareness will yield protection from the greatest fears. Because a lot of times the ways that we can combat our fear and anxiety is simply by taking a small next most aligned step, taking action. You guys, I can't wait to hear. I hope somebody writes to me and tells me about their little hinges and what kind of big doors they're swinging open. I hope I hear from some of you listeners. So thank you so much for being here with me today. It is no small thing, right? And here's the thing. I do a podcast every single week. I have been consistent. I think this is 212 episodes, 213 episodes, whichever one this is, right? I have consistently done this. And over time, we see the download numbers growing, right? Small thing. Well, it's not actually that small of a thing to do a podcast every week, but I will say, let's just use the metaphor. small thing every week. I commit to going online and communicating from my heart to your heart, to try and be helpful in some way, to add value in some way, to connect with you, right? To create relationship with you, even though I'm kind of talking to you. I hope you can feel my good intentions and my love in my voice, right? Trying to be helpful. Because I'm not, I don't get paid to do this podcast. It costs me money to do this podcast, but it's one of the ways that I get to be of service and connect and build relationship and honestly have fun, right? I love doing a podcast. So here's the thing though. I do this each day, and then slowly, I always say gradually, but inevitably, the listenership, the audience maybe grows. Maybe the downloads grow. I get, more. I get to go out into more ears and more heads and more hearts and more homes. Like, how cool is that? And it seems like a little thing, but it has big consequences. It has big ripple effect. So the exponential effect of small things, sometimes we don't see it. And you know what? Sometimes we might not see things in this lifetime. But even when we think about I'm going to stop there. Cause like I said, I was about to go down another whole other tangent, but I'm going to stop here. So you guys, thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you so much. I celebrate you. So high five to whatever you accomplished today, whatever little thing that you got done today. Don't be a high bar jumper. Don't just do the thing, not acknowledge it, and then set the bar higher for yourself. Take a moment, let your nervous system kind of like receive it. Right? Take a look at it. Take a look at yourself. Spend some time with yourself. Acknowledge your wins. Acknowledge where you've made progress. Acknowledge your process of transformation and what you're trying to do. And then if floats your boat, send up a flare and let me know. I'd love to hear from you. Okay. Sending you so much love, you guys. Wherever you go out into the world today, leave yourself, right? What do we mean by that? Leave yourself. Think better thoughts about yourself. Speak kinder words to yourself. Be more patient of yourself. Forgive yourself for your little nonsense, the little things that you do, right? So, and extend that across the board. More compassion, more kindness, more mercy, more grace to yourself, to the animals, to the planet, to your brothers and sisters, right? May you leave yourself, the people, the planet, the animals, the environment better than how you found it. Wherever you go, may you be a blessing.
Hey, you guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Karen Kenney Show. I super duper appreciate your time, friendship, and support. And look, if something that I shared from my heart today somehow landed in yours, I'd love to hear about it. So please tag me on Facebook or Instagram or IG stories or wherever the cool kids are hanging out these days, and let me know what your favorite part was or what you found most helpful. You can find me over at Karen Kenney Live. That's Karen, KenneYlive. And if you're digging what I'm saying and you want to hear more, I'd be wicked grateful if you could go to iTunes and subscribe and leave a review, because you guys, that's how you'll help me to keep spreading the love. And if you can think of someone that could benefit from hearing this episode, please share it with them. I'd also love to stay connected with you. So if the feeling is mutual, please go to KarenKenney.com/freebie and download my free guide to building your spiritual team. Until next time, my brothers and sisters, keep living in the fearless flow. Know that I see you, I appreciate you, and I love you. And wherever you go, may you be a blessing.